Now to our major story. The Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Mekanti Baru, has responded to allegations of corruption and violation of contract laws raised by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachuku. The NNPC GMD said the minister's allegations are baseless, casting doubts on the reconciliatory move expected between them. And here is a breakdown. Kachuku said he did not review these contracts. The crude term contract valued at over $10 billion, the DSDP contracts value over $5 billion, the AKK pipeline contract value approximately to about $3 billion, various financing and location funding contracts with the NOCs valued over $3 billion, various NPDC production service contracts valued at over $3 billion to about $4 billion. This is Mr. Baru's response on this contracting process. He says, in the statement released by the NNPC today, that contrary to the assertion of Dr. Kachuku that he was never involved in the 2017-2018 contracting process for the crude oil term contract, Dr. Kachuku was in fact expressly consulted by the GMD, and his recommendations were taken into account in following through the laid-down procedure. Thus, for him to turn around and claim that, I quote, "these major contracts were never reviewed or discussed with me," end of quote, is most unfortunate to say the least. Now, this is Mr. Kachuku reporting to the President on the issue of due process. He did say, "There are many more, Your Excellency, in most of these activities. The explanation of the GMD is that you are the Minister of Petroleum and your approvals were obtained. However, the correct governance should be that the Minister of State and the board review the transaction and give their concurrence prior to presentation to you, as I, in many cases of things that happen in NNPC these days, I learn of transactions only through publications in the media. The question is, why is that the parastatals, which I supervise as Minister of State or Chair of the board, are able to go through this contractual and mandatory governance process, and yet NNPC is exempt from these?" Well, listen to Mr. Baru's response. He says, "It is important to note from the onset that the law and the rules do not require a review or discussion with the Minister of State or the NNPC board on contractual matters. What is required is a processing and approval of contracts by the NNPC Tenders Board. The President, in his executive capacity or as Minister of Petroleum, or the Federal Executive Council, the FEC, as the case may be." And in what may seem to be an offshoot of this popular bickering, Oil Workers Union in the NNPC are backing Mr. Baru. The National Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengasin, and the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, have pledged their support for the transformation stride of the Group Managing Director of the corporation, Dr. Mekanti Baru. Now that you have the premise, everyone, let's get perspective to this issue. I have a policy analyst, majorly a lawyer, a regular analyst on Channels Television, Mr. Liberas Oshoma, and a petroleum engineer and a chartered accountant, Mr. Balazaka. Both of them join me in the studio here. Many thanks, gentlemen, for coming on the program. So we will be getting more of the professional point of view to this issue and the legal perspectives to these issues. Let's start with the legal perspectives to this matter. Mr. Baru has come to say, look, all of your accusations are baseless. And in fact, I do not need to pass some of these contractual agreements by you. Can the GMD of the NNPC, by law, the NNPC Act and the Procurement Act, can the GMD do, he stated, two different states of contract, service contract.
Yeah.
Now.
And procurement contract.
And procurement contract. Can he actually do that by law?
Yeah, you see, this also has exposed the inconsistencies in our laws. By virtue of Section 1, Subsection 2 of the NNPC Act, the board manages the corporation. And then if you look at Section 3 of the Act also, the GMD runs the day-to-day activities of the corporation. But then where the problem is, this is an act that was passed before the Public Procurement Act. The Public Procurement Act says for public procurement in every corporation, that the tender board of the corporation and the approving authority, the FEC, is enough for purpose of procurement, public procurement. And so you find out that without necessary reference to the enabling statutory laws of most of these corporations. So when you have a statutory corporation, for example, and then for the sake of procurement, what you have is a situation where once your tender board, the procurement processes passes through your tender board, and then their review in situations where the approval threshold is above that of the board, they are reviewed by the FEC, then it's as good as haven't complied with the provisions of the public procurement. Even though in some cases the enabling act setting up that corporation also states otherwise. So that's where you have a bit of conflict between what is happening, the position of Ibe Kachukwu and the position of Mekanti Barrow. And then it is made complicated also by the president, who there is no instrument in the hand of the president enabling, apart from appointing Ibe Kachukwu as the board chairman, there is no enabling instrument in the hand of the president empowering Ibe Kachukwu to act in his stead. And so you find out that where there is a conflict, because it is obvious that there is a crisis between
but
the
GMD. But say that the president and the assumption of office has asked him to coordinate on his behalf.
In coordinating. But like what I said now, it's obvious that there is a conflict between the GMD and the Minister for State. And so what the GMD has cleverly done, once he needs approval, the president, it's the substantive minister anyway, so it takes it above the chairman of the board and goes straight to the president, who approves. But if you remember also, the Minister for State did say that when Oshibanjo was acting president, Oshibanjo will always refer Mekanti Barrow back to the substantive Minister for State. But that was not the case with Mr. President. So that's where you have the conflict. Right?
It's a very difficult one to choose, especially when people now start to talk about the petroleum industry. You guys always bring a lot of technicalities into it. You bring a lot of jargons into it that makes it difficult for an average Nigerian to understand in clear terms.
This time around, we're going to break it.
Let's break it down. Now, for an average Nigerian who thinks, what exactly is happening here? This is a place where a lot of corruption issue has been taped on this industry. What exactly is happening from the letters that you have seen on both sides and the releases that you have seen on both sides? What exactly is happening?
Breaking it down, this is the way I will approach it. Anywhere, if you have management disharmony, then it simply means within that corporate entity or organization, it will be very, very difficult to actualize or implement the vision and mission of that corporation. That's the first thing that is going to happen. Then
so you're saying in essence that there's the division between the GMD
of course,
and
there is management disharmony. And when you talk about classes of management, you can talk about operational level, tactical level, and strategic management. In the case of Dr. Kachukwu and Dr. Barrow, you're talking about the two most senior Nigerians that are superintending over the Nigerian oil and gas industry. It's as good as saying we have handed over the custody and destiny of the oil and gas industry into their care to help us manage it and redirect it. And first of all, we need to have it at the back of our minds that when you talk about crude oil, you're talking about an international commodity. It has a global outlook. So there is a global oil community there watching. You're also talking about a commodity that constitutes probably more than 80% of the oxygen of the revenue of Nigeria. Then you're also talking about a situation as we speak today in Nigeria where a Nigerian is the sitting president of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. You're also talking about a case where Nigeria is the first country to produce a first female president of OPEC. So when you have this kind of disharmony at the strategic level, it is bound to send a very wrong signal to the oil community, and it is bound to cause confusion internally.
But it's interesting, and like you have said, why would there be that kind? Okay, we need to take a breather for a moment, Mr. Zakabala and Mr. Liberos Oshoma. But when we come back, we dig to the heart of this matter. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.